Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. And if you're here expecting a happy ending, you're in the wrong story. This started with an empty fridge. No, really, that's how it began. Just me standing there in my socks, staring at a carton of expired almond milk and a half-eaten tub of salsa. It was 2:17 in the morning. I remember because the digital clock on the oven kept blinking. Power outage earlier that day. I hadn't reset it. She wasn't home. Said she was staying over at her sister's after a rough week. Funny thing is, I'd already spoken to her sister. I called to ask if she needed me to drop off Curran's meds. She said she hadn't seen her in months. I didn't freak out. I just sat there, in the kitchen, with that godforsaken blinking clock, and that fridge full of nothing, and that ache in my gut that felt like it had been building for years. I pulled out my phone, opened our shared calendar, and stared at the little pink heart she'd drawn on today's date. Date night. Yeah, right. At exactly 2:39 a.m., I got a message. Unknown number. No name. Just a photo. Her. With him. And the part that really shattered me? Her smile. That wasn't the smile I got. That wasn't the smile she gave me when we watched bad movies on Sundays or when I surprised her with that weekend trip to the lake cabin. No, this smile was raw. Unapologetic. Hungry. Like she'd never looked at me that way. I didn't cry. Not right then. I did something much worse. I laughed. It was sharp and hollow, and it bounced off the kitchen walls like I'd just heard the punchline to a joke no one told me. Then I stood up, walked into the bedroom, packed a bag, just a small one, and grabbed a folder I'd hidden behind the dresser 2 years ago. Emergency cash. Old passport. Burner SIM. By sunrise, I was gone. No goodbye. No note. No explanations. I left the keys on the counter and walked away from everything. From the apartment, the dog, the plants she never watered, the memories, and the man I used to be when I still believed in people like her. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want closure. I just wanted distance. For 6 months, I moved through towns like smoke. I changed names, grew a beard, deleted every trace of myself online. I became invisible, and it worked. Until it didn't. Because 3 nights ago, she found me. And Reddit, whatever you think comes next, trust me, you're not ready. The first thing I noticed was the envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just a thin, white envelope tucked under the windshield wiper of my rusted-out pickup truck. The same truck I'd been sleeping in for the past 2 weeks near a washed-up harbor town on the Oregon coast. It was damp that morning. Foggy. The kind of morning where silence feels heavier than usual, like the air itself knows something's wrong. I stood there, frozen, staring at the envelope like it might explode. For a second, I thought it was a parking citation. But no one cared enough to find me. I wasn't even legally parked. Half the time I slept on dead-end streets and hoped no one bothered to notice. When I finally opened it, my hands were shaking. Not because I thought it would be from her, but because part of me knew it was. Inside was a single photo. Printed. Glossy. Not recent. I could tell by the jacket I was wearing, one I'd tossed into a donation bin weeks ago. But that wasn't what got me. It was the angle of the shot. It was taken through a window. A motel room window. The exact room I had stayed in during my second week off-grid. Someone had been watching me. The message on the back was written in black ink. Only 5 words. We need to talk. Please. I crumpled it up instinctively and tossed it, but then I stood there for a long time staring at the crushed ball of paper in the gutter. My brain was buzzing, not with thoughts, just static. Like something had short-circuited. How had she found me? I had no social media. I used cash only. I didn't contact a single person from my old life. I even changed the spelling of my name on motel sign-in sheets. And yet, here I was, exposed. Found. Hunted. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed in the driver's seat, windows cracked, one eye on the road. Every pair of headlights that rolled by sent my heart pounding. I felt like prey. And the worst part? I wasn't even sure what she wanted. Was it guilt? Regret? Closure? The next evening, I went to the local laundromat to clear my head. It was one of the few places that still took quarters and didn't ask questions. I sat in the far corner, watching my faded clothes spin in circles, when I saw her reflection in the vending machine glass. She didn't say anything, just walked up and sat on the cracked plastic bench across from me, like we were 2 strangers waiting for the same bus. She looked thinner, paler, but her eyes, those wide green eyes that used to crinkle when she smiled, they were the same. And they were locked onto mine like I was a ghost she wasn't sure was real. I had to find you, she whispered. I didn't speak. I just stared at the washing machine, pretending it was louder than her voice. She continued, I know what I did. I know you hate me, but you can't keep running forever. I finally looked up, and the words I gave her were colder than anything she expected. You don't get to chase the man you broke. Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry. That's what scared me. She wasn't broken. She was determined. I stood up, grabbed my damp clothes, and walked out without another word. I didn't know her closure. I didn't know her my pain. But even as I left her behind again, I knew it wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't go back to the truck that night. It felt exposed now, like she could find me again, or had never stopped watching. So I walked, for hours, through dark, unfamiliar streets, past shuttered seafood joints and flickering motel signs, until my legs ached and my soles burned through the cheap sneakers I bought secondhand in Crescent City. Eventually, I found a 24-hour diner, one of those all-chrome places that still smelled like stale coffee and fried oil from 1987, and sat in a booth farthest from the door. The waitress didn't ask questions. She just slid me a lukewarm cup of decaf and a napkin with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I appreciated that. People who don't pry are worth more than gold these days. I kept replaying everything in my head, not just seeing her again, but the way she said, you can't keep running forever. Like she knew where I'd end up before I did. Like she had some map of my mind that I never agreed to give her. And honestly, maybe she did. Maybe you don't spend over a decade with someone and not learn how they break. I sat in that booth until the sun started bleeding through the blinds. I hadn't touched the plate of toast I ordered. It felt like chewing would be too loud, too real, like it would shatter whatever fragile silence was keeping me from screaming. Around 6:20 a.m., I caught something out the window, a silver sedan parked just across the street. The same kind she used to drive. I told myself it couldn't be hers, that she'd gone. But the longer I stared, the more I recognized the little details. A chipped mirror, a dent in the front bumper. My gut twisted. She hadn't left. She had waited. That was when I knew she didn't come just to say sorry. She came to get something. But what? I paid with the last of my small bills and slipped out through the kitchen door, nodding to the dishwasher, who looked too tired to care. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have a new hiding spot. But I knew I couldn't stay in that town anymore. She'd blown it wide open just by showing up. I cut through alleys, trying to stay out of sight, heart racing like I was being hunted, and maybe I was. By the time I reached the edge of town, I had only one option. There was a train yard about 3 miles out. I remembered it from a job I'd done back in April. A guy needed the locks changed on an abandoned storage car. I knew where the workers parked. I knew the schedules. If I was lucky, I could hitch out of here before she realized I'd slipped through her fingers again. It took me nearly 2 hours to reach the yard, weaving between woods and side roads, ducking behind dumpsters whenever a car passed. I kept checking over my shoulder like she might leap out at any moment, holding that same envelope, smiling like this was some romantic scavenger hunt. The truth is, I'd have preferred a knife. When I reached the yard, I waited, hid behind a stack of crates until the maintenance crew loaded up and left. Then I climbed into an old freight car and pulled the door just close enough to leave a crack for air. The metal floor was cold and unforgiving, but I didn't care. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I'd disappeared again. But before I could even close my eyes, I saw it. Another envelope, tucked just beneath the rusted brake lever. Same handwriting, same ink. No way. No way. I opened it with trembling hands, half expecting blood or something worse, but it was just one sentence. You can run, Lowell, but not from the truth. And below that, a photo of me sitting in the diner booth, from inside the diner. She was closer than I thought, closer than she ever should have been. And this time, she wasn't alone. My first thought was simple and stupid. I'm not alone in here. That freight car, which had felt like a steel sanctuary moments ago, now felt like a coffin with breathing holes. I dropped the envelope and backed into a corner, my shoulder blades pressed to the freezing metal wall as I stared into the dark. No sound, no footsteps, no creaks, just the rhythmic metallic groans of the train cooling in the morning chill. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been in there recently, maybe still was. The photo, it wasn't just proof she was watching. It was a message. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I miss you." Just cold, calculated control. That wasn't the Corinne I married. That was someone else. Someone I didn't recognize anymore. Eventually, after what felt like an hour of holding my breath, I forced myself to move. I crawled to the other end of the car and slowly cracked the door, peeking out at the yard. Empty. Deserted. The crew wouldn't be back for at least another hour. I could make a run for the tree line and disappear again. But where? I had no cash left, no clean clothes, and now, no certainty that I was ever truly alone. She had eyes on me. Maybe not just hers. Maybe she had help. Preston? Her so-called retreat friends. I didn't know. And that unknown gnawed at me worse than any betrayal. I stayed in that car the rest of the day, too afraid to move. Every crunch outside made my heart seize. Every bird landing on the roof made me flinch. I hadn't felt like a man in months, but now I didn't even feel human. I was a shadow of the guy I used to be, back when I believed my life, my marriage, mattered. But now I was prey, and she was the hunter. Or worse, she was the puppeteer, and I was dancing on invisible strings. By the time night fell, I was dehydrated, dizzy, and unraveling. I finally stepped out, moved cautiously to the edge of the yard, and limped toward a gas station a few miles away. I needed food, water, directions, maybe a phone, something to reclaim a shred of control. I reached the station around 10 p.m. The clerk barely looked up when I walked in, just nodded, his eyes glued to a tiny black and white screen behind the counter. I grabbed a sandwich, a bottle of water, and a cheap disposable rain poncho. When I went to pay, I paused. Behind the clerk, taped to the edge of the monitor, was a photo. My face. A still frame from a security camera. Blurry but recognizable. A printed note below it read, "If seen, contact immediately. Urgent family matter." I dropped the sandwich. The clerk noticed. "Hey, man, you all right?" I couldn't answer. My mouth went dry. I looked around. The place was dead quiet. Just me, the clerk, and the dim hum of a broken soda cooler. But the walls felt like they were closing in. That photo, that meant she was spreading the net. She was using others to find me. This wasn't a wife looking for her runaway husband. This was a full-blown hunt. I changed my mind. I muttered and bolted out the door. I ran. I don't even know where to. Just away. Through muddy side roads and thick bushes, until my legs gave out, and I collapsed behind a row of dumpsters behind a shuttered mini-mart. I laid there, gasping, curled in on myself like a scared animal. For the first time since I left home, I admitted it. I wasn't just running from her. I was running from whatever she'd become. That night, I slept in intervals, startled awake by passing cars and my own dreams. In one of them, she was standing at the edge of a dark hallway, smiling. Not the smile she used to give me, but something else. Empty, stretched too wide, like she was wearing her old self like a mask. And just before I woke up, she whispered something. Only one word. Found. When I opened my eyes, there was another envelope on my chest. Same ink. Same handwriting. Only this time, it wasn't a photo. It was a list. With names. And mine was the only one not crossed out. It took me nearly 20 minutes to get the strength to sit up. The list in the envelope wasn't long. Maybe 7 or 8 names total, all printed in block letters. Some of them I recognized immediately. Doug Thatcher, Amanda Reeves, Clara with AK. People I knew. People we both knew. People who had been at the wedding. People who had stayed in touch after everything went downhill. And all of them were crossed out in heavy black marker, except one. Me. Just my name. Not crossed. Not touched. Just sitting there at the bottom like a stubborn weed that refused to die with the rest. I sat on the wet concrete, reading the names over and over, each time slower, like maybe the ink would change if I looked hard enough. But it never did. Same names. Same ending. Same threat. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that whispers and waits. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark behind that mini-mart, but by the time I pulled myself together and stood up, the sky had turned the sickly shade of blue that comes right before sunrise. I was filthy, shaking, and more terrified than I'd ever been in my life. Not just because she had found me again, but because now, I didn't know what she wanted. If it were revenge, she'd already have it. If it were closure, she could have begged for it the night she sat across from me in that diner. But this? Tracking down mutual friends? Leaving cryptic envelopes? Printing photos of me like I was some fugitive? It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about guilt. It was about power. And Corinne, the woman I once trusted with every part of my life, now had all of it. I knew what I had to do next, and I hated it. I needed to find someone from that list. Someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Someone who might have already been crossed out, whatever that meant. So I stole a phone. Yeah, I'm not proud of it. But at that point, I couldn't just walk into a Verizon store and set up a new plan. I waited outside a bus station until some guy in a wrinkled suit fell asleep on a bench, his phone slipping halfway out of his jacket pocket. I slid it out like I'd done it 100 times. I walked away before he even stirred. I ducked into a motel lobby, just long enough to sit on the floor outside the bathroom and log in using the guest Wi-Fi. The first name I searched was Amanda Reeves. She and Corinne were close, not best friend close, but enough that they used to get brunch and swap divorce memes. Amanda was dead. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean her obituary was the second search result. Passed unexpectedly 2 weeks ago. A car accident, apparently. I dug deeper. No photos of the wreck. No police reports. Nothing suspicious, but still, it didn't sit right. Next, I searched Doug Thatcher. Gone. Socials wiped. LinkedIn deactivated. No recent activity. The last thing he posted was a blurry photo from a coffee shop tag near my old neighborhood, 3 months ago. Clara with AK? Same thing. No digital footprint since May. 3 names. 3 ghosts. I started to sweat. The phone felt hot in my hand, like it knew too much already. I wanted to throw it, but I couldn't. I needed it. I opened the Contacts app and typed in one more name. My brother, Nate. We hadn't spoken in ages. Not since he called me a coward for walking out on my marriage instead of managing it like an adult. I never told him what Corinne did. I never explained anything. I just vanished. Like I always do. I hit call. It rang 4 times. Then 5. And then, a voice. Not Nate's. A woman's. Tired. Cold. Flat. Lowell. I was wondering when you'd reach out. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. You shouldn't be calling numbers from that list, she said. That's what she wants you to do. My throat tightened. Who is this? You know who it is, the voice said. And you're running out of time. The line went dead. No click. No beep. Just pure, empty silence. I stared at the screen until the lock timer dimmed it. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, I realized something horrible. This wasn't just about her finding me. This was about someone else, using her face. Her name. And I had no idea who I was running from anymore. The motel bathroom mirror was cracked, spiderweb fractures splitting my face into fragments as I stared at myself under the flickering light. My hair was matted with sweat and street dust, eyes sunken like they were trying to disappear into my skull. I looked like a ghost. No, worse. I looked like someone who didn't know who he was running from anymore. Because the woman on the phone? That wasn't Corinne. But she knew who I was. She knew the list. And somehow, she had access to my brother's phone. After the call, I didn't move for what felt like an hour. My thoughts were spiraling, every scenario worse than the last. Had Corinne even been working alone? Was this some twisted game of vengeance? A cult? An organized campaign to destroy every trace of my past? I know how that sounds. It sounds paranoid. It sounds insane. But when you're 200 miles from home, sleeping behind dumpsters, getting hunted by someone who keeps finding you no matter how deep you bury yourself, paranoia stops being a condition. It becomes survival. I left the motel without checking out. Didn't even glance at the front desk. Just shoved the burner phone in my pocket, tightened the hood on my jacket, and walked toward the highway like a man trying to vanish between heartbeats. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to get off the grid again, deeper this time. Rural. Forgotten. Somewhere with more trees than people. I caught a ride with a long-haul trucker named Emmett who didn't ask many questions. I offered to pay, but he waved it off with a gruff. You look like hell. I figure you're running from something worse than money. He let me ride as far as Farewell, Idaho, a ghost of a town with 1 gas station, a diner, and a storage facility that looked abandoned but still had cameras blinking red behind cracked glass. That night, I paid cash for a rickety 1-room shack behind an old bait and tackle shop. It didn't have Wi-Fi, didn't have a lock on the back window, didn't have anything but a stained mattress and a smell like old pine and mold, but it was mine, just for one night. I thought I'd sleep without wondering if I'd wake up with another envelope on my chest. But I was wrong. It wasn't an envelope this time. It was a knock. 3 sharp knocks. At 3:11 a.m. I sat up, heart pounding so hard it felt like my ribs were cracking. No one knocks at 3:11 a.m. unless something is very, very wrong. I waited. Nothing. I crept to the window, pulled back the edge of the curtain just enough to see out into the dark. The moonlight caught a silhouette, someone standing perfectly still by the fence. I couldn't see their face, just the shape. Slim, tall, holding something in one hand. I whispered to myself, "Don't open it. Don't be stupid." But I was already unlocking the door. When I stepped out onto the warped porch planks, the figure was gone. Just gone. Like fog. Like a hallucination. My breath was visible in the cold, and the air felt unnaturally still, like the whole world was holding itself in suspense. I turned to go back inside. That's when I saw what they'd left behind. It was propped against the doorframe. A small cardboard box. No markings. Light as air. I brought it inside, hands shaking. Opened it slowly, expecting a bomb, a phone, a thumb drive. But what was inside stopped me cold. A pair of keys. To my old apartment. And a note. Handwritten. Same ink. Same pen. Same controlled lettering. "Come home, or I'll bring home to you." My knees buckled, and I hit the floor so hard I bit my tongue. Blood filled my mouth, but I barely noticed. I stared at that box, those keys, and the note, and for the first time since I disappeared, I considered the unthinkable. What if Corinne wasn't chasing me at all? What if she was trying to warn me? And whatever was hunting me now had already gotten to her. I didn't sleep after that. I didn't even sit. I paced that tiny shack for hours, dragging my fingers along the rotten wood of the windowsill like it might ground me in something real. The box, the keys, the note, they sat on the floor untouched, radiating a kind of silent pressure that made the air feel wrong. I kept staring at them, waiting for something to move. A door to swing open. A figure to reappear. But nothing came. Nothing except the one question that wouldn't let go of my brain. Why now? I kept telling myself there was no way those were the real keys. It had to be a trick, right? Some replica, some weird manipulation to spook me into crawling back. But then I looked closer. The dent on the brass one? That was from the time I dropped them in the parking lot. The chipped plastic cover on the spare? I'd chewed that nervously for years. These were mine. My actual keys. Not fakes. And that meant someone had been inside my apartment after I left. Someone had access to things I thought I'd abandoned to rot in memory. Someone was inside the space where Corinne and I had lived together for nearly 10 years, where we'd fought and laughed and shared takeout on the floor, and they didn't just take pictures now. They took things. I knew what they wanted. They wanted me back there. For what? I had no idea. Maybe to finish whatever game they'd started. Maybe to make sure I never ran again. But more than that, deeper than that, I needed to see it for myself. Not out of bravery. God, no. I was terrified. But this had gone beyond fear. I was so far past scared that I was starting to feel numb again. Like the first few days after I found those texts on her phone. So I left. I packed the bare minimum. Jacket, burner phone, a dull pocket knife I didn't know how to use, and hitchhiked back toward home. I didn't even tell myself I'd stay. Just that I'd look. A quick peek into the old life, then I'd vanish again. That's what I told myself, anyway. The trip took 2 days. I slept sitting upright in the back of a delivery van, ate stale gas station muffins, and avoided eye contact like it was currency. The closer I got, the more everything in me tensed, like my bones knew they were being marched into a trap, but couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. By the time I stepped off the last ride and stood across the street from our old apartment complex, it was dusk. That pink-orange kind of light that makes everything look fake. The building looked the same. A little dirtier, maybe. The grass was overgrown. But the door? Same red paint, same squeaky hinges, same chipped numbers that never got replaced. I held the key in my palm for a long time, like it might bite me. Then I went in. The moment I stepped inside, the air hit me. Musty, heavy, but not abandoned. No, the place had been lived in. Not recently, but long enough ago that the dust didn't match the timeline. Furniture was covered in sheets. Our old couch. The kitchen table. The photo frames had been turned around. The mirror in the hallway was cracked, not shattered, just a single long crack like a scar. My boots echoed on the hardwood. The silence was alive. And then, in the bedroom, I saw it. On the bed, neatly folded, was the sweater I'd been wearing the day I left. Washed, pressed, placed exactly in the center of the mattress. Below it, another note. Good. Now you're listening. And beneath the note, a flash drive. My stomach twisted so hard I almost collapsed. My legs turned to static. I wanted to throw it across the room, but I couldn't move. I just stared at it, a cheap, black plastic drive with a cracked cap, like it had been yanked from a laptop in a hurry. I didn't have a laptop. I didn't have anything that could read it. But I knew someone who might. I stuffed it into my pocket and left as fast as my legs would carry me, ducking down the back staircase and vanishing into the alleys like I'd never returned. I didn't stop until I was halfway across town, breath ragged, heart slamming like a hammer in a steel drum. I had one last option. An old contact from the IT job I worked years before the breakdown. A guy named Rory. Paranoid, brilliant, and always in the mood for a mystery. I texted him from the burner. Need help. Urgent. Anonymous. You owe me one. 10 minutes later, he replied, meet me in 40. Bring nothing stupid. And as I stood there on that dark street corner, hands in my pockets, waiting to hand over the flash drive that might unravel the truth behind all of this, I felt something brush my shoulder. I turned. There was no one there. But folded inside my jacket pocket, one I swear had been empty, was another note. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a photo of Rory, dead asleep in his chair, and behind him, a figure I couldn't quite make out. But she was smiling. I didn't go to Rory's place. The second I saw that photo, his peaceful face, the shadow behind him, that smile, something inside me shifted. Not fear this time. Not even dread. Just a quiet, firm decision. No more running. No more games. No more letting someone else write the story of my life. I found a payphone. Yes, those still exist, and dialed a number I hadn't touched in nearly a year. It rang twice before I heard her voice. Lowell, Corinne said, calm, steady. No shock, no apology. You win, I said. I'm done playing defense. She was silent for a moment. Then, meet me where it started. I knew exactly what she meant. The old wooden bridge just past Bell's Orchard, where we used to go on Sundays before the world cracked open. The bridge where we once carved our initials, back when we believed forever was real. I showed up an hour before sunset. The bridge groaned under my weight, the planks warped from time and weather, but it was still standing. Just like me. I leaned on the railing, watching the water move like a secret beneath me. She arrived alone. No notes. No tricks. No manila envelopes or flash drives. Just Corinne, in a plain jacket, hair tied back, no makeup. For the first time in years, she looked human. Not like a mystery, not like a threat, just like someone who'd made mistakes and carried the weight of them every day. We didn't speak for a while. The wind did most of the talking. Then she said, I was never trying to hurt you. I swear to God, Lowell. I only followed you because I was scared. Scared of what you'd do, what you'd become. I didn't reply. She continued, her voice cracking for the first time. After you left, I went looking. I thought if I could find you and explain everything, you'd understand. But by the time I did, you weren't the same. You weren't you anymore. You were surviving, not living. I turned to her slowly. You cheated on me. I know, she whispered. And I'll regret it forever. We both stared at the initials on the railing. Faded now. L+C. A ghost of what used to be. Then I asked the question that had haunted me for months. The notes. The photos. The flash drive. The phone call from my brother's number. Was any of that you? She looked at me, eyes wide. What flash drive? That's when it hit me. She hadn't sent everything. Someone else had. Someone trying to push me back to this moment. Not to scare me, but to force me to face it. Maybe it was Rory. Maybe it was no one. Maybe it was just the broken pieces of my mind trying to glue themselves back together. In the silence that followed, she stepped closer. No tricks. No manipulation. Just raw, hesitant honesty. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. But I want you to live again. Really live. Even if it's not with me. And for the first time in months, I believed her. We didn't reconcile. We didn't kiss. There was no Hollywood reunion. Just two people standing on a bridge, finally letting go. I walked away first. Not because I was angry, but because I was ready. 2 weeks later, I got a small place near a coastal town in Oregon. Real windows. Real locks. A part-time job fixing radios for fishermen. I started reading again. Wrote letters to people I'd ghosted. Even called my brother. We laughed. It was awkward, but it was real. And that flash drive? I threw it in the ocean. Because some mysteries are better left in the past. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, even just a little, leave a comment below. Has someone ever followed you when you thought the story was over? Or have you ever disappeared, only to be found again in a way you didn't expect? We'd love to hear your wildest, strangest, or most unforgettable vanish and return moment down below. Don't forget to subscribe for more true Reddit-style stories right here on Reddit Confessions.